When we celebrate the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, we usually focus on the powerful men who funded it. We see the iconic photograph at Promontory Summit, Utah, taken in 1869. It was hailed as the greatest engineering marvel of the 19th century, connecting a vast nation. But the people who actually built it are completely absent from that famous photograph. This is the story of the massive, hidden immigrant workforce that carved America out of solid rock. In 1862, Congress passed the Pacific Railway Act. The goal was to build a continuous rail line across the continent. Two companies were tasked with this immense challenge, the Union Pacific building from the east and the Central Pacific from the west.
We'll squeeze them dry, not if I get there first.
The Union Pacific relied heavily on thousands of Irish immigrants, many of whom had just fled the devastating potato famine. They laid track across the Great Plains, enduring extreme heat, blizzards, and raids. Out of desperation, they began hiring Chinese immigrants. Many politicians and foremen openly scoffed at the idea. They argued that the Chinese workers were too physically slight to handle the brutal, back-breaking labor required to break through mountains. They were quickly proven wrong. The Chinese workers possessed extraordinary endurance and unmatched discipline. Within a few years, over 15,000 Chinese immigrants made up roughly 90% of the Central Pacific workforce. Then came the ultimate test, Cape Horn in the Sierra Nevada. It was a sheer, vertical cliff of solid granite dropping 1,200 feet into the river gorge below. There was no foothold. Using techniques brought from China, the workers wove massive baskets out of reeds and rope. They were lowered by hand over the edge of the cliff, dangling hundreds of feet in the air. Suspended entirely by rope, they used hand drills and explosives to slowly chip away a narrow ledge out of the rock. They drilled deep holes, packed them with unstable black powder, lit the fuses, and shouted to be pulled up. If the men at the top didn't pull fast enough, the workers in the baskets were blown to pieces by the blast. It was agonizingly slow. In some areas, they progressed only 8 inches a day. Hundreds of men died. They fell from the cliffs. They were crushed by falling rocks. They were killed by premature explosions. But the greatest killer wasn't the explosives. It was the winter. The winter of 1866 was one of the most severe on record. Snowdrifts reached up to 40 feet high.
You will not stop working!
Not for the cold, not for the Union Pacific.
Keep building!
The railroad must go through. The Chinese workers literally lived entirely under the snow, digging vast networks of tunnels just to move between their camps and the rock face. Massive avalanches were common. Entire work crews, consisting of dozens of men, were swept away and buried alive in seconds. Their bodies wouldn't be found until the snow finally melted the following spring. To bypass the worst of the weather, they began carving the summit tunnel directly through the solid granite core of the mountain. Working in 3 8-hour shifts around the clock, they swung 18-pound hammers in nearly complete darkness. To speed up the process, the company introduced nitroglycerin, a highly unstable liquid explosive. It was incredibly effective, but lethally unpredictable. A slight bump could trigger a massive explosion. They were paid significantly less than white workers doing the exact same labor. They had to buy their own food and tents, while white workers received room and board provided by the company. In June 1867, driven to the breaking point by the disparity and danger, they laid down their tools. It was one of the largest and most highly organized labor strikes in U.S. history up to that point.
You are to move the food and supplies from the warehouses. They get nothing!
They demanded equal pay and shorter hours. The company Trapped in the remote mountains without any rations, they were slowly starved out. After 8 grueling days, the strike was broken. They were forced back to work under the same brutal conditions. Finally, on May 10, 1869, the two tracks met in the high desert of Utah. A massive celebration was held. Speeches were given. Telegrams were sent across the globe. The famous photograph was taken. The men who actually carved the path through the mountains were kept out of the frame. When the project finished, thousands of immigrant workers were simply dismissed, left to find their own way home. Rather than gratitude, the nation soon rewarded them with the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. It was the first major law in U.S. history that explicitly banned an entire ethnic group from entering the country. An estimated 1,200 Chinese workers died building the Transcontinental Railroad. No official records were kept, but their engineering achievements were permanent. The rail line drastically reduced cross-country travel time from months to mere days. It completely transformed the United States into a modern economic powerhouse. The foundation of this immense wealth was quite literally laid by immigrant hands. Today, historians are slowly piecing together their scattered stories. They were far more than cheap labor. They were the architects of the American frontier. They faced unimaginable danger and deep prejudice, yet completed one of the greatest infrastructure projects in history. Their bones may rest quietly beneath the mountain snows. But their massive physical impact on the nation remains entirely indestructible. The railroad stands as a monument to their silent sacrifice. If these stories matter to you, help us keep them alive.